What's up, people? Welcome to our live stream. Today, we are going to be doing some linear perspective gesture drawings, and hopefully, you have some fun with us. If you would like to learn how to turn your artistic weakness into your strength, check out artprof.org, where we have lots of free resources, tutorials, critiques, art dares, pro development, all that cool stuff. So, let's get started with the drawing.
Yeah, I need to fix my screen. So hang on a sec.
Oh.
Let's fix that.
All right. Well, I got some cool Spider-Man merch, guys. While we're waiting.
There we go.
That's
okay. Better.
I
would like to know who's going to draw along with us today, because we haven't had a draw along for a little while. And I realized this morning, Jordan, dude, I haven't drawn for a while.
How could you say something like that to me? What's wrong with you?
I don't know. It's really bad. I don't have an excuse. I just don't feel like it. Isn't that stupid?
Clara.
I know.
Well, it's okay. At least we're fixing it now. At least.
I know. If you're looking for the reference photos, those links are in the YouTube video description below. And I went on this photography spree this week. So I went to this coffee shop. I went to the mall yesterday. And so I hope this helps you. And I actually created a new album called Linear Perspective on the Flickr page. So if anybody here wants to practice, that is a whole album of photos you can practice from. Jordan, I'm curious, did linear perspective ever really intimidate you?
It always does.
Still?
Not because I don't know how to do it. It's because I'm always too lazy to figure out like where the actual vanishing points are. That always bugs me. So if I have like when I do it in like Procreate or Clip Studio or something like that, and it automatically draws lines for me, it's much less intimidating. But otherwise, it's just annoying. So I avoid it. So it's more laziness than anything.
Jordan, lazy?
Yeah, I know, huh?
I didn't know you were capable of that.
Oh, I totally am. Trust and believe. I try not to expose it too much, but I figure once in 6 years of working at Art Prof, it's allowed, right?
Once in a while, we'll allow it. Now, you're not doing any measuring, right? Are you going all freehand or?
Everything is freehand. I'm really drawing from my shoulder and my elbow a lot. I'm trying not to move my wrist because it starts to curve my line a lot if I do that.
Right.
So I'm trying to be really, really careful about that. And like if you were to see me, I'm like this the whole time, like just very robotic almost. And that's how I'm getting the lines I'm getting. But I looking at the photo reference, I don't think my vanishing points are far enough from each other. But I'm not going to really let that bother me too much. So.
This is a funny stream, everybody, because it's about linear perspective, but we're not using any rulers. We're not measuring. We're just going to freehand it, which, Jordan, I think a lot of people would say, are you crazy?
I think I think that's the point of the gesture of it, is just trying to figure out how to get the results you want while not using the tools that we are used to. And I think sometimes a ruler can even slow you down depending on the situation. So, yeah, I welcome the challenge, even though I'm a little lazy with it.
Well, ultimately, it's not really about linear perspective. It's about capturing a scene, about showing the place. This is a very, I don't know if I'm saying the word right, bougie cafe. I find it kind of annoying to go to, but it has really dramatic ceilings, which I do like. And so that's one of the reasons I shot photos there. And you can see I put in some initial lines, but now I'm just blocking out shapes. So a lot of people might think, well, why do you want to put in so much shading? Don't you want to get all the lines right? But I think the shading and just seeing, okay, where are the pockets of space? Where is there a pocket of darkness? So this whole ceiling at the top is all very, very dark. And for me, adding that as a big patch of shading is a way to organize the space in my head. Because Jordan, I think as artists, we do have to almost travel through the space we're drawing.
Yeah, I actually remember when I was really little, and I would watch TV shows, especially sitcoms. I would somehow like really be able to put myself in the space. I'd go like, you know what? I think that the staircase and the sofa are this many feet apart. And even if it was a show I never saw in real life, like I was never on the set, I could picture that. And so I kind of do the same thing here as much as I can. And it ends up working pretty well, I think. But it's definitely got its challenges.
Thank you so much, 10,000 Crows, for the super sticker. I so much appreciate your support. Keep them coming, everybody. I'm feeling actually sort of crappy about our Patreon because it's the lowest it's ever been, and it keeps going down. For a while, it would sort of go up and down. It's like every week, it's less and less and less. People keep canceling. And so it's a bummer. Because Jordan, as much as I try to stay positive, it's a bummer when you think you're doing well and then all of a sudden things start to take a nosedive.
Yeah, I started feeling that way about like my social media posts and stuff like that because I used to be getting a couple hundred likes, and now I'm lucky if I get 50. It's like what the
Really?
heck? Yeah, that happens all the time.
Super frustrating because you hit these, I guess, highs and lows. And when you hit the high, you're like, oh, I'm finally doing something sort of right. And then all of a sudden you do these nosedives and it's stressful. I mean, the Patreon, especially because it's a money thing. I mean, social media is obviously important as well, but I'm bumming about the Patreon this week.
Sure, that makes sense to me. I get it.
Kikax asking, what are the perks of Patreon? Thinking of joining? Well, one of the biggest perks is that there are Patreon channels in the Discord. And in the Patreon channels, you'll get to interact with me and a lot more of the staff because I'm really not in the public channels very much. And so I'm in there every day. I give critiques in there. And also, Jordan, I think a big perk of the Patreon channels is that it's a much smaller group of artists.
Yeah, I kind of look at it as like a premium, service or premium channel or something where it's just a little bit more exclusive in the sense where, it's private, but not that you guys can't join if you don't, if you wanted to. And I think it's an even more tight-knit community because the people who are in the Patreon channels usually all critique each other's work more often. They get to know more about each other. It's sort of like when you take a track with us. It's sort of the same thing. So I really think it's great for that.
The other thing is we have that critique rule in the public critique channels where if you post an artwork, you have to leave 3 comments. In the Patreon channels, we don't have that. But I will tell you, you will come across as a jerk if you never critique everybody's stuff because people are very good about that in the Patreon channels.
Yeah.
Thank you, Amaris. You all rock.
Ace is sitting right next to me right now. This is the puppy, for those who don't.
What's he doing?
He's just standing here. Wait, let me see if I can bring him on for a second. Come here, Ace. Come here. Okay, come walk over this way.
Oh, I want to see him. Oh, he's so cute! Look at him! Oh my gosh! Oh my
He's
gosh!
a little small for how high the camera reaches. Sorry, buddy. It's like, don't use me for that. Not for you to show me off. Oh, he's still here.
So another thing that I like to do is I pick particular things I see in the scene. So if you look at my drawings, everybody see this chair that's in the foreground? This is really helpful as a landmark within the drawing. So I have something, I know I can always relate that back to this table, which has perspective in it. And I'm also noticing, well, so in the reference photo, there's this like, green wall in the background that has a very sharp edge. So this is that sharp edge. I'm going to make that really dark and very visible. Do you have any landmarks you're looking at, Jordan?
Well, my scale is really weird, so at this point, I don't know anymore. I mean, I was looking at this corner, this wall in the corner right here, this door, this giant bench and stuff. But that's a consistent thing I noticed for me is I often get the scale really off when I'm sketching freehand. That's the one really that's the one thing I really got to work on a bit. But yeah, I don't know about landmarks per se.
Another thing that helps everybody is to do a linear perspective scene that's really zoomed out. So if you look at this, we have a chair, so that's a good sense of scale. But then we have a person who's very, very small in the back. Because, Jordan, sometimes people try to draw a corner of a room, and that's really hard to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I think that one of the biggest things is you have to learn a scale, which, like I mentioned a second ago, is sometimes very challenging even for me. And if you don't understand how big something is, or you can't find a way to figure that out, then it's going to be more difficult for you. So using an element like a chair or a poster or a cup, whatever you can to think, whatever you can think of to make it work, I would use that immediately.
Sentient says, is this one of the cafes where everything sounds extra loud? Yes. I guess another reason I don't like this cafe is because the strip of street it's on, my husband said when he grew up, it was just a street with stores. And now it's full of those. Have you seen in LA those ice cream shops or gelato bar, and you walk in and it looks like a hospital? Like everything is sleek, white. They're all over Utah. And the ones I've been to, they don't have good food either. And so now if I see a restaurant with that aesthetic, I don't want to go.
C's Candy is kind of like that, but I don't really go to C's Candy often. I see it in the mall, but everything is sleek and clean and white and very sterile. The coffee shops I go to, I don't even drink coffee, but the ones I go to are actually kind of cool. One of my favorite ones is like a bookstore combined with a coffee shop, and they have a table for people who work and everything. You'll see go there, and you'll see people like typing up their screenplays and all that stuff, and it's kind of fun actually. But
do people know what I'm talking about? Has anybody else seen this phenomenon of hospital-like ice cream shops? I need to know. Oh, here's another thing. Does everybody see there's this artwork on the wall? And these are in perspective. And you'll notice in the scene, there are really big shapes, like the table is very big, the ceiling is very big, but then you have these little bitty artworks on the wall. And so a range of shapes of scale, because Jordan, you've already got really big shapes, but you even have little tiny squares as well.
Yeah, I like to start with just the bigger shapes first. I think it helps me set the stage for where everything is, and then I can add all these little details to make it easier for sense of scale and everything. And those details are super important because it helps make the world feel lived in when you have a variety of shapes. So, like for example, when I this past summer I worked at a game company and I did a lot of decals and we were doing like a subway station and I did a lot of stuff that or really small, like signage and stickers and stuff that most people wouldn't really notice. But when you plaster it all over the place, it helps the world feel lived in. So it's really, really important to have those things.
All right, we have Sentient saying, can confirm Patreon channels are awesome. Manette says, really like being in the Patreon channels, thinking of increasing so I can get back in. Start a new job with lower pay, so got to see if I can swing it before I sign up. Yeah, I mean, obviously do what works best for you. But I really enjoy being in there. I feel like I really know people in the Patreon channels. It's very different than the public channels where I don't really have consistency in terms of watching people's progress and interacting with them. Thank you, Attagirl, who says, don't bum. How are the private courses going? Well, we're not doing tracks right now, but there is still room in these 2 January workshops. We have one on drawing and painting clouds. We have another one on commissions for artists. And we still have a few spots. So if you want to get in, go down to the YouTube video description below. And we have a link there for our workshops. It's also on the front page of artprof.org. Seven Angelic says, being able to freehand it is great because you can always use the ruler to clean it up after. Do you ever do that?
Oh yeah. If we had the time, I would totally use a ruler or maybe even the straight edge tool, and I would fix up the perspective. Like I would do a ton of stuff to work on this, you know. But I think for sketching and just figuring things out, you know, like for example, this was a thumbnail, let's say for a comic or something like that, then this I think is totally fine. But when you get to the final artwork that you want to present to the world, then I think that's when you want to bring in the big guns, aka the rulers.
I think it's easier to approximate and then fix it up. I feel like when you try to measure every single line and get it absolutely correct, it's so slow. Or is that
That's
just me?
No, I agree with you. I agree with you. I dread that stage of things, and I actually think sometimes it messes you up when you're drawing because you start to lose the creativity, and you start being so overwhelmed that the drawing isn't right in terms of perspective that you end up not creating something as unique or fun. So yeah, I mean, obviously,
I also
so.
I also think just if you're drawing that precisely and that carefully, there's no chance you're going to have any sense of gesture or humanity in your drawing.
Probably not.
It sounded so
Probably not
deep.
at all.
I'm drawing the scene of a Lisbon street. This is very different than the coffee garden shot because it is much more shallow. So you can see there's not as much linear perspective. It's mostly in this building on the left-hand side. There's a little bit here, but this whole area in the middle, there isn't any linear perspective. So that's another thing is you have to recognize where is the linear perspective? Because Jordan, yours is all over the place. You have multiple vanishing points, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, there's an infinite number of vanishing points in any given scenario. I would say for the most part, the structure of it is just 2. Like, so this is my photo reference over here. You guys can see that. So if I were to pull out the vanishing points, like that is probably all going to. Oh, wait, I don't know if you can see that. But oh, what's a good color? I was trying to demonstrate teaching, but I guess this doesn't want me to do it. Let's try this. Whatever, close enough. It's like all these lines go to the same spot, I would think, and all of these lines go to the same place. But everything else, the chairs, the little knickknacks on the coffee counter and all that stuff, the blurred out face guy over here, they're all going to be different.
Caruso, California College of the Arts, is my favorite, my top art school. Any portfolio tips for them applying to the comics program? I don't know a lot about CCA. Do you, Jordan?
Not really. I've heard of people who've gone there, but I don't know anything about their program. Um, I would say though, since you're applying for the comics program, the number one thing I would focus on for your portfolio is being able to tell a story. You know, whether it's an actual comic that you submit or you just a single illustration. That's what a comics program is about. You know, being able to tell a succinct story in as few shots as possible, um, and it could be as simple as a boy walking his dog or buying an ice cream. It doesn't have to be this extravagant Lord of the Rings epic series. It just needs to tell a story.
I think story, it doesn't get prioritized the way it should. I think it's the same thing with character design. People really want to make a cool looking character. Of course you do. But that character doesn't reach people if it doesn't have a good story.
Yeah, that is very true. That is something I actually try and prioritize with my students because I had a whole lecture on storytelling specifically because they were going to design their own characters, and it's really really hard. And if you're going to design anything, whether it's a character or a location or a vehicle, whatever, it has to fit within that story. You know, because certain things just won't work. Like you won't see. Uh, what's an example? You know, you might not see something in Harry Potter that would exist in the Hunger Games or something. You know, like they're two different stories. Or I don't know, you wouldn't see Aang using a lightsaber necessarily. Yeah, so it's just
Right.
you have to figure that stuff out as you go.
They're also asking, how do I choose a school that's friendly and accommodating to neurodivergent people? I'm autistic, have ADHD, several other mental illnesses. Check in with the school's student services and see what they offer, because I think a big thing that's hard for a lot of students is a lot of times you don't even realize what's available to you on campus. And it really is up to the student to do the research and find out, oh, they have this supporting group of counselors. They have this. They had Wellesley College, they had a whole counseling service called the Stone Center. And so I would find out information about that program and what they offer to students. It really comes down to asking about what's available. Manette says, I was wondering, how do you do drawings like this, a whole room with furniture, details, etc., without getting overwhelmed? I struggle and give up.
Um, Probably not the best person to ask this question or to answer this question, but I would say big, medium, small. That's really the solution. You know, if you're working on an environment like this, you want to just break it up into as many steps as possible. So first thing you might say is, I need a horizon line, and then you could figure out where your vanishing points are, and from there you figure out the big structures, like from my situation, it's the walls and this table or this counter for the barista book counter, whatever you call that. Then I might put, you know, the people or the posters and just keep working smaller and smaller and smaller. That's really the easiest way I can put it together. But you know, not everyone has to follow that formula. But I find that is the easiest way for me.
For me, the most helpful thing is to see it not as, oh, there's a chair, there's a window, there's this, but to say, what are the shapes? Boil it down to looking at it abstractly. And don't spend too long on anything. You can see in my scene, I'm just approximating because there's too much emphasis, Jordan, on I have to get it right now.
Yeah, like even in my
Don't.
drawing, yeah, as I'm looking at my drawing, I realize my horizon lies way too high compared to the photo. I'm like, whatever, it is what it is. It's like I drew what I drew, and you know, as long as you commit to the decision, it's fine. You know, like you're not supposed to be a slave to your reference. So in this situation, I'm changing things up. unintentionally, but it is. I'm here now, so yeah.
Think about everything you're drawing. It's an approximation. I think this window is about here. And then you jump onto something else, you come back. Oh, no, it's not really there. It's a little bit over here. And so that's why another thing that's helpful is draw really light. If you draw super dark immediately with traditional media, it's less likely that you'll feel like you can change it. Because so much of the time, the reason people feel stuck is they feel like they don't have options. Oh, I drew it, I can't change it. And that feels terrible. You feel totally powerless.
Mm-hmm.
So if you work on it in a way that feels like, oh yeah, I can change it, that I think is also very helpful. Oh, this is good advice from Anna about disabilities. You must do extensive research into their disability services. My academic success was so dependent on getting the right accommodations. Another thing that's helpful is to talk to your professors. I always ask students the first day of class, if you have anything you want me to know about you, maybe English isn't your first language, you have a medical condition, you have a disability, let me know. Because I think sometimes students don't realize they can do that. And I felt so bad. I had a student in my class and I didn't know she was autistic for 5 weeks out of a 6-week program. And she finally told me the last week, and I felt terrible about it because if I'd known that, I felt like I could have helped her better. So a lot of it is you telling teachers, I mean, obviously only what you're comfortable with, but as a teacher, I really appreciated that when students would tell me. Good point from Carolyn. That shading you just put in just popped it into 3D for me. Suddenly, the depth of the alley really reads. Yeah, so you can see in the beginning, I was drawing shapes. I was drawing, okay, there's like a little grid here. There are these little garbage bags at the bottom. And I was doing all these lines, but the thing is, it was all fragmented. Shape here, shape there. But then when you come in and you just shade a very big shape like that, all of a sudden, that's a very different relationship. And the thing is, I drew this darker than it really is in the photo. But you can cheat, right, Jordan?
Oh, all the time. Why not?
Do it.
You're drawing, so there's I hesitate to say the word should, when it
Yeah.
comes to art, because I think that can be very restrictive, especially as a creative person. And there are definitely rules that I think are a good idea to follow, but there's no reason why a certain rule can't be broken when it's your own thing. Now, if you're working on a Disney movie and they say things have to be done this way, then okay, well, you gotta live with that. You're working for them. But if it's your own piece, have fun with it. I think that's the most important thing.
Also, no reference photo has everything you need. I think if I drew straight from a reference and didn't make changes, I don't think the pieces would achieve what I want, because what I'm trying to capture here is depth. By darkening this, it makes everything a lot easier. If I say, oh, but it's not that dark, I can't draw it that dark, then I'm limiting myself. So
Mm.
see the reference, it's a starting place. It's not your final destination. Technomatic says trick to drawing lighter is get used to softer pencils. They'll still be dark even with light pressure, but you do not dent the paper so easily. On the other hand, I know people who like the hard pencils because you literally cannot go dark with them. If you're drawing with a 3H, no matter how hard you press, you're never going to get as dark. But yes, there is that risk because they are so hard that you can actually end up scratching the paper, which is not great. Levi says, do these techniques work in general for everything so long as I have a horizon line, or there's specific things to look for in outdoor scenes? I think the way to consider this, we're talking about sketching linear perspective today, but all the stuff about gesture drawing, it all translates. I'm not drawing a figure, I'm drawing a scene, but Jordan, even though they feel so different because it's a figure in a room, the fundamentals are still there, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's certain principles in art, gesture being one of the biggest ones, and that's just about being loose and not being, not allowing your reference to control you too much. Obviously, it's important we're both using reference as we draw. And you guys have seen so many of our live streams where we've done that, but I think you want to keep that element of surprise and fun in your work as well. And sometimes that means deviating a little bit or adding, a giant tree in the middle of your piece just because. And that's what I do all the time. I'll take references from like 5 different places to draw one character. And it works. It works really, really well, actually.
Let's think about what are some of the fundamentals of a gesture drawing. For me, draw light, move around the page, capturing the entire subject and showing the personality of the subject. People are used to this being about a figure, but are you moving around the page, Jordan?
Always.
Are you capturing the entire subject?
Much as I can.
Are you showing the personality of the subject?
Uh-huh.
It's the exact same thing, everybody. I know it doesn't feel like the exact same thing, but it is. Because I hear so much people say things like, oh, I'm so good at drawing unicorns. I can draw them so easily. But I'm so bad at drawing Benedict Cumberbatch. It's like, no, it doesn't have anything to do with it. It's the same fundamentals. Whether you're drawing a unicorn or Benedict Cumberbatch, it's all the same fundamentals.
Yeah, pretty much. I agree. I would agree with that. It's
Right?
when you really think about it, like when I talk to my students, I tell them this. Everything is made up of maybe about 4 shapes. You have spheres, you have cubes, you have pyramids, and you have cone shapes. Just about everything in the world that you can draw is based off of one of these 4. Now, obviously, you could have a dodecahedron or whatever, but for the most part, this is everything that you need. And if you can draw these, you can draw anything else. And I think that that's where the simplification comes in, just kind of narrowing stuff down. Like, for example, this booth that I drew right here is basically a cube. It's just elongated, and it's got a couple of sides to it. Same thing with this staircase. It's basically, a rectangle with some triangular elements to it. It's all very, very simple when you really break it down.
That said, though, there are things to look for particular subjects. For example, if I'm drawing Benedict Cumberbatch, I want to draw his cheekbones because that's a structural element to that topic. And linear perspective, go to a place that has tiles on the floor. Why is that helpful, Jordan?
Tiles automatically connect with a certain vanishing point, and so you'll be able to see it much easier if you do that, I think.
I am drawing Gap Kids, and there's tiles in the front. That's basically your linear perspective map. Just draw the tiles. Same thing, sometimes you'll have tiling at the ceiling, or sometimes there's a repeated object if there are lights or signs that are the same size but they converge and move back into space. Look for things like that because those are really good guidelines. The same thing with the human figure. If you're drawing the bony landmarks, that's your map to how to make that happen. Brazen Spirituality says, if your point of view, hence vanishing points, are in the center of the page, but the scene you're drawing is landscape oriented, left to right, wall in front, how do you indicate linear perspective? I'm not totally sure what you're referring to. Do you want to take a stab at this?
Well, let me just read it again. If your point of view and vantage points are at the center of the page, the senior drawings landscape. Is this just talking about 1 point perspective? Because it's the vanishing
I
point
mean,
in the center of the page.
that's what I'm drawing right now. Okay, so for me, I'm going to guess, I'll draw it with red so everybody can see it better. I'm going to approximate, my horizon line's probably here. And I'm going to bet my vanishing point is here. This is pretty straight on 1 point perspective. And so if I draw my, you know what I'll do? I'll draw some vanishing lines with red so you can all see that a little bit better. Okay, so that's some of the lines. And then you can see how this is the side of the window case. So I'll make those a little darker so everybody can see. I mean, it doesn't matter what the orientation is of the image, whether it's horizontal or wide. None of these things change. Mm-hmm. Sorry if we didn't interpret your question correctly, but yeah, that's what we're looking at here. Oh, this is so nice, Sad Blob. This channel has boosted me so much out of art block. I actually feel motivated again. Started 6 works in progress within the last week. Oh, fantastic.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Oh, man. This is so confusing. Everything is glass in my scene. And I'm noticing this is the angle which is in perspective of the display case. But then I'll draw it in a different color. The door is open, but the door is different. It's not the same vanishing point. Yeah, these little parts on the side of the door. That also gets confusing because then you have objects that, for one reason or another, don't line up, and you can't be fooled by them.
Yeah, that's always the worst. Ugh.
Oh, maybe this is what Brazen was asking. W315, 1 point, the vanishing point can be off center, even way off the side of the page. You can try 2 point as well. Yeah, so this is my linear perspective. This is my vanishing point. If I wanted to, I could put that over here. I mean, that would change where the vanishing lines go, but you can put the vanishing point anywhere on this horizon line. The vanishing point, it's always on the horizon line. You can't put it up here. It's always here. It's just, it can be anywhere on that horizon line. I feel like my drawing, my photo of the Gap Kids, is sort of ominous looking, isn't
it? Yeah, I can see the Shining girls coming out and going like, play with us.
But that's, again, what we were saying earlier, that, yeah, we're talking about linear perspective, but I'm going to make this a very apocalyptic looking Gap Kids, because that, to me, is the personality of this space.
Be like a Kipo in the Age of Wonder Beast. You seen that show?
No.
It's a lot of fun. It's on Netflix. And it's basically a post-apocalyptic world, but the girl in it is like super excited about life. And so they go into these places that are like 3,000 years old, and they're like, oh, look at this. This is laundry detergent. Wow. You know, they're just amazed at all this little stuff. It's pretty fun.
That's funny. Oh, good point from Anna. We're going back to the disability. You have to understand that disclosure is scary, carries possible stigma. I have wildly varying stories about how professors reacted to learning about my disabilities. That's a really good point. And I mean, it's up to the professor to not be a jerk, but we can't always count on that, unfortunately. So I would amend that by saying, do it if you're comfortable. If you feel like that's a professor who will listen to you and not hold that against you. But I also understand that even if you do get a professor like that, maybe you're still not comfortable. So it's obviously it's case by case, depends on the person. But yeah, that's something to think about. Thank you for bringing that up. Brazen's asking a bazaar, a city street, shops ahead, people, landscape. What kind of perspective is it even? You have no view in front of you, but a wall of shops 20 feet ahead, but feels 3D. You can break down any scene into linear perspective. The key thing is you can't let yourself be distracted by all of the stuff. So in this scene, hopefully you can see this, some of you. This is the food court at the mall, which is a total disaster. There's hundreds of people at the mall. There's chairs and tables and lights and everything. And so within that chaos, you have to pick certain things that are going to help you organize that space. So for me, it's this ceiling. This ceiling up here, the vanishing lines are pretty clear. And you can also look for vertical lines because these columns are vertical lines. In 1-point and 2-point perspective, all the verticals will be parallel. 3-point is different. But if you look for vanishing lines and a couple of verticals, that is the way to sort out the chaos because it's there. It's just you have to look for it. There are some scenes where it's so big, like there's no rhyme or reason. Have you seen that, Jordan?
Yeah, those are tricky to find out. What I used to do actually, I would go on art books and I would literally take a ruler, especially my Avatar art book. I would go and take a ruler and figure out exactly what perspective they were using, like where's the vanishing point and how I can figure this out. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's just to help train your eye. And if you think that's a good tool for you to learn from, then I say go for it.
And by the way, everybody, I do have 2 lectures on linear perspective. One covers 1-point, the other one covers 1 and 2-point. And I really want to do a 3-point perspective lecture. And so if anybody in our community wants to sponsor that video, I get so many people asking me about 3-point, and I really want to put it out there. But since our Patreon is taking a nosedive, we need people to step in from the community to make this content happen because I'm just so absurdly busy and I just don't want to drive myself absolutely bats.
Please don't do that.
No, I'm already bats. Just what degree of bats?
Trying to start a second sketch here, but Photoshop is being finicky. Ugh.
Also, does everybody see here the lights that are in the background? That, like the tiles, you can follow those lights because those are shapes that are repeated. And you can see pretty clearly from these two, those are very large. They get smaller as we go back into space. Anything that repeats, why is that helpful, Jordan?
If it repeats, then you can, and they're the same size, you can kind of guess where the vanishing point is a lot easier. So, like for example, I'm actually using this as a reference here. It might be hard to see because it's kind of dark, but there are these benches that are approximately like the same size, and I can go back and I could figure out, oh, hey, these are all kind of going back to this point right here, you know? So that it becomes really helpful to see the vanishing point in situations like that. Or these chairs, we know these chairs are the same, So we could say, oh, well, there we go. So it helps to be able to see patterns like that. Um, yeah.
Attagirl says, what about multi-point? I guess it would be like Christmas with many random boxes open. What does it cost to sponsor a video? Well, we do have information. We have a whole page on our website about how you can sponsor a video, and we have different rates depending on the format of the video. So if you want to sponsor a 1-minute short, there's a rate for that. If you want to sponsor a lecture live stream, and we have a Google form where you just check off the format, the subject, whatever it is you're interested in. So that link, it's in the YouTube video description below under sponsor a video, and there's information there. So I think what you're asking, Attagirl, is when each object in the space has its own linear perspective. Because yes, if you have a whole bunch of boxes and none of them are lined up and they're in random places, to do that correctly, you would have to have individual vanishing points and horizon lines for every box. And at that point, Jordan, is it really necessary?
Not so much. Well, I mean, you would only have one vantage, no, not one vantage, one horizon line for any given image, but the vanishing points, you will have multiple. I remember when I was in class at RISD one time, and we were learning about perspective, and the teacher had us all had paper sprawled everywhere. You know, we'd all been working for hours, and he said, "How many vanishing points are in this room?" And we're like, I don't know. He's like an infinite number because this piece of paper is turning this way, and this water bottle is turning this way, and this pencil's turning that way. So it just becomes a lot. So unless it's a really, really big deal, I would just yes, you know, I would guess a lot of that stuff.
Well, because if you have 10 boxes and you have 10 vanishing points, at that stage, who can even tell if it's accurate or not?
Yeah,
I think it's just better to eyeball it.
yeah. That's where the gesture kind of comes in. I totally eyeball stuff, and you know, like right now, I'm eyeballing this roughly. I'm not measuring this out, and I think for perspective assignments, like in school and stuff, people will judge that. But as long as it looks good, as long as it looks okay, I don't think anyone's really going to give you too much of a hard time for that. Because who has that kind of time of day? I certainly don't.
Oh, sorry. Yes. I meant multiple vanishing points. So here it gets too complicated. The point is, if you have 15 boxes, you don't have to bother. It's not necessary.
Try that again.
A Simeon says 3-point perspective is the norm, not 1-point or 2-point, which are special cases of 3-point. I don't think it's the norm. I'm just going to say that every situation is its own thing. 3-point perspective, most of the time, it's sort of subtle. Like in an everyday situation, it'll be there, but it's like so minimal. Like it's so close to being 1-point, so close to being 2-point.
Mhm.
My best way to illustrate 3-point is actually, I would walk around downtown where the buildings are really tall. And then when you look up at the building, that's a very blatant version of 3-point perspective. But you know what? If I give a lecture, it'll be way easier for everybody to understand what I'm talking about.
Oh. It's a weird ceiling.
Yay, artist Bav, first time catching us live. Who else here is watching us live for the first time? Carolyn says, good exercise might be taking a magazine with a ton of pictures, drawing in the vanishing point lines on it wherever you see them. Yes, so many people think you have to draw to learn linear perspective. I don't think that's true.
No, as a matter of fact, when I started learning about what like tools like Blender can do, and things like Procreate and how they have like an automatic perspective tool, I was thinking that the way perspective is taught is probably going to have to be adjusted to accommodate for that because I think we do things the hard way sometimes when reality I don't think you necessarily have to do that all the time. And I'm not sure exactly what the solution is, but I think you could totally use photos. You could use blocks. You could, eyeball it. As long as you understand the principles.
One thing that I did, because I did teach a linear perspective class at RISD. Jordan, did I tell you this? I agreed to teach the class, and I didn't know anything about linear perspective.
What? Why?
I had because I never studied it in school because I was a painting major and I skipped that first semester, which is when they teach linear perspective in the RISD illustration department. And I was like, yes, I'll teach it. And I was like, okay, I have a lot of homework this summer.
Wait, you started as a painting major and then moved to illustration?
Yeah, you didn't know that?
No, I didn't. I didn't know that. Huh.
So anyway, getting back to what Carolyn says, what I did to teach students linear perspective, I didn't have them draw right away. I actually took them to the library where there's tons of perspective with all the bookshelves and everything. I said, okay, everybody walk around with your phone, and I want you for half an hour to take photos of where you see 1 point, where you see 2 point. Because the thing is, if you can't see it, you can't draw it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I like that method. I always think the most tricky thing is just figuring out where all the vanishing points are. That's always the part that throws people off because it's so tedious, and if you get something off, even by a little bit, especially in school, you get marked down very quickly. And that always annoyed me a lot.
Oh, that's annoying.
Yeah.
Also, does everybody notice how for all the drawings I've done today, and Jordan, you're doing it too, we've drawn these boxes. Why is that helpful?
The frame, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's helpful to get a sort of border on what your drawing is going to be. And I think it's much easier to understand where your limits are when you kind of construct them. So, yeah, that's why I use them. That's why I use them. And also, perspective only really works when you have it confined in a certain space because sometimes things get distorted if you move too far out. So,
Well, what never worked for me, Jordan, was when teaching linear perspective, starting it with no reference at all. Have you seen this in some classes? They'll say, okay, everybody draw your horizon line, draw your point, now add some vanishing. Like, I think this is a terrible way to teach for me. I'm not saying it doesn't work for some people, but then people do this. They say, okay, now I want you to draw your buildings, and every single building looks the same. Have you noticed this?
yeah,
They all look like this. They all look like shoe boxes.
yeah, you could easily tell a perspective assignment for class in a drawing. Like it's very, very obvious. And I think that's part of what makes perspective kind of boring for a lot of people is because it doesn't seem to have any creativity to it, and which is kind of true. Like it's very rigid in a lot of ways, which is why I think that taking advantage of the gesture aspect of it is so important, and being able to add your own spin on things. Like instead of having this building look like a shoebox, maybe give it some interesting tiling, or maybe give it some cracks in the wall. Okay, add some pipes or some cool windows or something. Let's make it different.
I mean, what building looks like this?
You ever seen Toy Story?
That's true. The point is, this is totally an abstract concept. You're not drawing a thing here. You're just measuring, okay? I'm drawing a scene here, okay? This is a scene from when I was in Lisbon. Oh, this is the Tile Museum. That's what this was, okay? And it's so helpful to know what you're drawing. Like if I say, okay, Jordan, draw a linear perspective space, it's not interesting. But if I say, draw this bougie cafe, it's different.
Yeah, there's more of a focus when you can do stuff like that. And when I was in a perspective class, we all had similar prompts of like Jack and the Beanstalk or Cinderella or something like that. We would just have to come up with an image representing that, but it becomes complicated when you want to figure out how to tell a story and have that perspective because it's just a lot to think about. And I think it ends up stressing out students more than anything. So you have to find that balance.
Oh man, this scene. Oh gosh, I don't even know. These tiles on the floor, they're diamonds.
Oh yeah.
God. All right, I'm not even gonna think about it. I'm just gonna approximate. This is really hard because it's not like the gap drawing I did. Because the gap drawing I did, the tiles actually lined up with everything. These have their own thing, so I'm just gonna approximate. Because oh man, that's a pain in the ass.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. That's exactly what I'm doing. That's why like when I do anything professional and it's got perspective in it, I'm always going to use Clip Studio Paint because it's got automatic like ruler tools in there, and it just saves.
Oh.
And Procreate does that too, but it's so nice because it'll also snap to the line. Like if it can tell that you're trying to connect to that point, it'll automatically do that.
Oh. One thing that's very hard about this scene I'm doing right now is that it has arches. And the arches make things harder because everything's round. And then there's the vaulting on the ceiling, which is even more of a pain in the butt. So the way I would recommend doing it, everybody, here, I'll show you the photo. So in the photo, if you all look at, does everybody see these dots? Okay, these dots are in perspective. So I'm going to draw the ceiling first. I'm going to make a vanishing line, and I'm going to put those dots here. I think there's about 5. Okay. And then I'm going to say, okay, well, the dots are where the vaulting crosses. So the vaulting, this one, would be like that. And then they also attach up here. There are these architectural things. I mean, really, I'm doing connect the dots if you think about it. So there's the vaulting, and you can see here are the little architectural things. There's probably a word for this. I totally do not know what it is. Okay, so there I have my vaulting in place. And now I'm also going to look at the top of the columns. So if you look at this, and this, these 3 things align with the vanishing line. So I'm going to just draw the top of those columns like this. 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to draw in the columns themselves because I want to get my verticals. And then the bottoms of the columns also line up. And now I can do connect the dots. It's kind of fun.
Connect the dots.
This is what they are. Cereal box buildings, says Seven Angelic. Love it.
I'm going to use that term.
Snap Sketch Snooze says, great idea to draw over the magazines. There's a couple architectural magazines at the library too, except the architectural magazines make me mad. It's like, look at these really, really rich people who designed their mansion from scratch.
I don't know if I was really, really rich, I'd want to do that. I want to have a stay. Matter of fact, I'm gonna have to imagine my stay at the art studio. What that would look like. There'd have to be a movie theater in there. There would have to like it'd be in one room, and then I have my giant settee and like 4 screens around me, and then I have to have like LED lights with Joe McFo written somewhere.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
what? It's
I
my
mean, you do have a miniature version of that right now.
I do. It's already awesome. Wait, I gotta show it up now. Bam! I don't know how well you can see that, but
Love it.
Joe McFo. It's uh, and clearly a dog is gonna have to exist somewhere, and maybe a Bob Ross poster or two.
So this drawing, I did mostly line first. I have some of the other ones where I put in the tone a little bit sooner, but because all of the arches and the vaulting and the ceiling were tricky, I decided to hold off on that. But value really helps. Knowing that this area back here is in shadow and the light is coming in from the left-hand side. Do you have very visible lighting in your scene, Jordan?
Wait, I'm sorry. I think I missed you. Say it again.
Do you have lighting that's obvious in your setup?
Yeah, it's coming from these windows right here. So it's pretty simple. There are these small lights on the ceiling, but they don't really affect anything. Honestly, it's probably causing a lot of people to have trouble reading. But yeah.
A Simeon says, one way to tell where the horizon line is whether you see the top of the object. Horizon line is above. If you can see the bottom, horizon line is below. Well, it brings up what I think is important, which is eye level. And so you have to think about your point of view as the viewer. So Jordan, if I just stand up straight, that's the typical eye level people are used to, right? But what if I sit on the floor and I'm like lying on the floor in my front?
Yeah, well, that's called a worm's eye view, and that would be. I mean, there's a lot of images that show that where you're looking up at someone, and it's usually good for showing like intimidation or a tall building or something like that. And there's 3-point perspective involved in that sometimes, but depending on the scene that you're trying to convey, that is super important. And so I think it's good to learn these traits and figure that out.
Well, ultimately, linear perspective is a point of view. Where are you in the scene? If I was a bird and I'm flying up near the ceiling, bird's eye view is very different. And so really what linear perspective does is it tells you, where are you in the scene? I was here taking a photo of this archway, and I wasn't lying down on the floor. I was just standing up. And so therefore you can see my eye level. Here, I'll put in the horizon line. I'm going to approximate. I guess I'm around there. Okay, so now look at this, everybody. This is, the horizon line is eye level. So horizon line, I'll write it down. Horizon line equals eye level. Okay, so this is my eyes. Now anything up here is above eye level. Anything below is below eye level. So again, that's where we can talk about horizon line all day. But what it comes down to, are you a worm or a bird?
That should be the slogan for perspective for our prof from now on. Are you a worm or a bird? Or the title of the 3-point perspective video that you're going to do.
If anybody wants to sponsor it, I'll make it happen. But we got to keep the lights on, everybody. And oh my God, I am dying for the day that I don't have to ask for support anymore. But we're not even close yet. So yeah, for now, you have to listen to me talk about that.
There's this show I like called The Chosen, and they're a completely crowdfunded show, and they're asking millions of dollars per episode. But on the live streams, whenever they premiere an episode, the creator Dallas he always asks for donations and stuff, and everyone's like, "You talk too much about donations." He's like, "Hey, if you give me the amount of money we need, we don't need to do this anymore. I can get you right to the episode." And so he started a hashtag called "Shut Dallas Up," so that,
Ah,
that people could donate money.
maybe that's what we need. Get Clara to quit talking about budget because, I hate it. It's the thing that frustrates me the most about Art Prof. The other stuff is fantastic. Hanging out with all of you and seeing what you're doing is my favorite thing in the world. But oh boy, all the business crap. It's annoying. Oh shoot. I totally put my things in the wrong place. Ugh. Okay, the crap. Okay, this is where you should connect the dots. I did not. And so now this is off. It's okay.
Ooh, I'm gonna tell.
Oh no. Shuriken says, when we say 1 point, we mostly use vanishing lines to connect the measurements. But if we use oblique drawings, also uses vanishing points, are those two the same? I don't know what an oblique drawing is. I feel like I should, but I don't. Do you?
I don't know what that is either.
I have no idea. I'm sorry. Maybe somebody can look it up for me while we're on the stream. Oh, Shuriken says, in high school, subject was called drafting. It's where we studied the structures and lines. I should have taken that class. Before I agreed to teach the linear perspective class. This is really good. Lisa says, 2 questions I asked myself. Is the top of the object above the horizon, above your eye level? So if there's a ceiling light and I'm just standing in the room, that's above my eye level. If there is a disgusting slug on the floor and I'm standing up, it's below my eye level. I mean, it's literally what we're saying. Is it up above? Is it below?
I think one thing that's really simple, if you get stuck trying to figure out the terms and stuff and everything, just look at the things around you, right? Like for right now, I'm above my desk, and if I look down, I'll see the top surface of it, but I can't see the top of the door frame because I'm below it. So if you just look around, sometimes that'll help as well.
Karusu says, I'm extremely confused. Well, here's the thing about linear perspective is we're doing a draw along right now where we're showing all of you how to apply the concepts. But really, for this to make any sense, you've got to listen to my lecture because my lecture breaks it down, gives examples, and we have 2 of them. So just type Art Prof Perspective into YouTube and you'll find it. Because it's one thing to know the content, it's another thing to see how to apply it. I mean, they really are separate experiences.
Yeah, that's true. I would say it becomes it's difference between head knowledge and experiential knowledge, or life experience versus just reading things out of books, like even art tutorials. If you just watch a ton of tutorials, in theory you might know how to draw, but if you don't actually pick up a pencil or a paintbrush, you're not going to get better. So you got to have to get the practice in.
At the same time, with stuff like this and anatomy too, I mean, yeah, you can practice drawing, but beefing up your drawing with the knowledge of the anatomy is extremely helpful. So you need both. And sometimes people struggle. They might know every single muscle on the body, but maybe they don't know how to apply it to the context of drawing. And that's where I'm always just very hesitant to make things so academic because it's confusing for people.
Yeah, I I have a student who I help out, and he always has questions on anatomy, and he's always trying to get to like the nitty gritty to the point where it's almost like doctor level anatomy stuff. And some things I don't
Yeah.
even know the terms of. I'm just like, bro, it's a patella. Like, just that's the knee. Like, it's just come on. Like, I don't know how much more I could explain it to. And he's like, well, why does it do this? I'm like, I don't know. I didn't make it the bones. Okay, I just know how to draw. you know. So yeah, that happens.
Or you get people who need to know so much because, you know, if you think about the human body, there's so many muscles, there's layers and layers of muscles. And when I went to grad school, I had a professor who was like that. He would teach us I'm like, dude, I can't even see that muscle. It's not even relevant to me as an artist. I mean, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with learning those muscles, but at a certain point, it's like, do you really need all this information?
You really don't. Like, when we were learning about the spine and drawing, we learned about the C7 very specifically because that leaves a mark or a bump on the back of your neck. After that is just spine. Like, everything else is like, you don't,
Yeah.
we don't notice that, or how many bones there are on the rib cage, or unless you're drawing a skeleton, that's different. But yeah, most of the time you don't see that stuff. I actually, in some ways, think it's more important to know more of the muscles than the bones in some cases because you actually see that more. But don't take that as a way to not learn bones. But I'm just saying.
By the way, everybody, C7 is 7 cervical vertebrae. So just your neck, just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I mean, you probably can't do that in your neck. But if you have a skeleton, you just count the vertebrae. And the 7th one is the one that pops.
Like, you're like, if you have a skeleton, just count it.
I got one hanging around. Aw, thank you, Anna. Anna says, if I could single-handedly fund Art Prof, I would. So appreciate your support. Carolyn says, planning on a sketch of my parents' house in my art journal later today, since I'm visiting now. We'll use perspective in that. Yeah, do quick sketches. Like, how many people here, if you have experience in linear perspective, have done a gesture drawing of a scene? I'll do one right now because we're almost out of time, but I'll do one really, really fast to show all of you. You don't need it to be a finished piece. All right, we only have a little bit of time left. I'm giving myself about 5 minutes. Let's see what I do.
Wait, what are you drawing right now?
Just a super fast drawing to demonstrate that you don't need 2 hours to sketch linear perspective. That's it. I don't know. That was more like 2 minutes.
Yeah, that was really fast.
So I'll develop it more, but does everybody see, even with that period of time, everything's here? We have the plant, we have the chairs, window, floor, pipe, lights. It's all an approximation. This is not right. I'm going to go in and I'm going to fix it. But I don't know. Why do you think, Jordan, people stress about it's not right?
I think because everyone else does. I mean, and it's like drawing a face. We've seen so many faces that we could tell if something's skewed off, and I think so. I think there's that kind of pressure to get it right, and perspective is the exact same way. If you notice something that's totally askew, you're going to see it. And I think that kind of contributes, and makes people get really tight in the drawings, and they end up messing up even more sometimes, or creating a drawing that doesn't look interesting, which is actually sometimes worse.
Well, I've been going to life drawing once a week, and there's a few people there who have said to me, oh, well, can you help me out? You look like you know what you're doing. I'm like, okay. And I usually start by saying to them, Okay, well, first, before I help you, can you tell me what your objective is? What are you trying to get? What kind of results? And every person I talked to said, I want correct proportions. And that's a fine goal. But ultimately, is that really what drawing is about?
I don't think so. Um, I think it. I actually know a professor who focused on drawing realistically so much that he ended up getting bored later. And that's happened to me a couple times where I've been stuck in the same way of drawing, and I'm like, I'm bored. I don't. This isn't fun anymore. And that's when people start to change it up. Like one theory as to why Picasso even switched his style, because he knows how to draw realistically. But I think one reason he did start doing cubism is because he was bored. Like that could very well be the case. Yeah, I don't know for sure, but it's possible.
I mean, if I were to pick between drawing a space like this, perfectly precise and accurate, versus having some spots that are off, but really capturing the space and showing the atmosphere and the mood, I will take that any day over the accuracy of the linear perspective. And I don't know that the whole, you have to learn to do it correctly and accurately before you can give it personality. I don't buy that.
Huh. I guess it depends on the context, because
It
sometimes
does.
like with anatomy, I feel like that's kind of tricky to learn from doing something, doing it that way. Um,
Yeah.
that I also am hesitant to say that you should only draw realistically and then after you match that, then stylize. I think there should be a healthy balance. And I notice that people who have more freedom in that tend to actually do better because they're loose with it and they're not so uptight, and they don't have to unlearn how to stop being uptight, which is very difficult. Like I've struggled with that a lot.
Well, I tell people you don't have to wait. If you want to, yeah, study how to do it more accurately, keep doing that. But then also at the same time, that doesn't mean you can't go and do something abstract or go mess around. It's not I just don't buy the whole, you're not allowed to do this until you can do this.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, the only time I would say not to do that is if it's going to impede your growth significantly. Like for example, a lot of you guys know about the whole art schools and anime debate. Like, why can't I put anime in my portfolio to SVA or RISD or whatever? And that I think has a genuine concern. Doesn't mean you can't draw anime, but I think sometimes it ends up being a crutch for some people. In that situation, I think is fair.
I like what Lisa's saying. My goal is realistic enough that you recognize the subject. I don't want the wonkiness to detract from the meeting, so real enough. Yeah, that's what I think. Shuriken says, think I'll buy a sketch bag tomorrow, eager to learn again about perspective, especially when I've discovered someone who can teach me. Yay!
Oh, that's nice.
Brazen says, please link on the support page that goes directly to the tiers list. Too easy to get frustrated and give up. I'm opposed to easily finding as opposed to easily finding the tiers and do it. Okay, all you need to do, and the link is in the YouTube video description below, just go to the Patreon page. The Patreon page will take you to see all of the tiers. Mustele, Clara, gains speed demon mode. Just like Michael Jackson, speed demon.
That's right. Sing it, Clara. Sing it.
I can't sing, Jordan.
Oh, okay. I find it funny. The song "I Want You Back." I find it funny
Yeah.
how those lyrics are. Like, if you really listen to what they're saying, it's basically calling his girlfriend ugly and then being sad because she found someone else. That's really what the song's about. It's just messed up, and this 11-year-old singing it. Like
No, you know what's funny is the song "I'll Be There," because he's what 8 years old. He's like, I'll be there when you need me. I'm like, really?
Like, bro, you can't even walk to the store by yourself. Stop.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so good, though. I love it.
Remember, everybody, we still have spots open for our drawing and painting clouds workshop and also commissions for artists. And Jordan, tell us what's happening later tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern.
6 p.m. Eastern, join the Joe McFo Show YouTube channel, where I will be doing some more sketching for Shadowboxers, probably finishing up this poster as well. So hope to see you all there.
Please join us in our Discord. Right after the stream, we are having a stage session. That is your opportunity to talk to us on voice. We have a ton of fun. Meet us in the post live streams stage channel. And a reminder, there are many ways you can support Art Prof. You can purchase an artist call, a portfolio critique, and I'm so excited, everybody. This is brand new, personal art curriculums. Go down to the description below. There's a link down there. You can all check that out. You can donate via Venmo or PayPal. You can also sponsor a video. These are the 4 videos that happen because generous sponsors from our community stepped up to provide the funds to do that, make it possible. And thank you to our top Patreon supporters. I'm so happy with all of you who have stuck with us, because people come and go. That's fine. I get it. I'm not saying everybody has to stay all the time, but those of you who have been with us, oh my gosh, you are critical to us keeping the lights on. That said, though, we dropped another $60, which is really bad because last time we dropped 93. That's like $150, which for us, that's really bad. So we need your support, everybody. Please consider donating. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the Discord.